Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dale. I'm the Carbon Reduction Manager within Corporate Property at Suffolk County Council. The main part of my role I joined the council a little about 4 years ago. Prior to that, I worked at Virtus looking after energy contracts for a number of schools as well. So the main thing with my roles when I came in 4 years ago, I work alongside another colleague within Corporate Property. We have about 100 properties across the estate, and our remit was you have an investment fund, get these schools, get these sites to net zero. So that was the target. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we were doing and then go on to some of the advice and some of the things we did and how that might be relevant to schools and what they can look at. A lot of this, some of you are probably already looking at, I'd imagine. So first slide, a little bit of a graph showing what we've done on the corporate estate at Suffolk County Council. Black line is the historic footprint, red line is the carbon emissions if we hadn't done anything. You'll see a dotted green line going all the way down towards zero. So that was the target we drew up in our kind of action plan, and the solid green line is how we've done today. And there's a series of things we've done. So we looked at BMS is basically a posh word for controls. It's just for larger buildings. Installing lots of solar, insulating everything we can, and then looking towards renewable heating. District heating is another thing we're looking at. So just gives a sense of what we've done to date. Quite proud that we've managed to achieve a 38% reduction in our carbon emissions across the 100 buildings. The large majority of that was from energy savings, and a good proportion was on our largest building. So the most successful thing has been controls and time of day usage. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, hopefully. So here's a few pretty pictures of stuff we've done. So as you can see, we've done lots of solar. We have done lots within the buildings as well. They just don't quite make for as good pictures. Also down at the bottom, we look after battery storage containers, a number of our sites. This was before the technology got really small. So this was one of the first grade ones down at the Hold, using reused batteries, which is also a good story for carbon emissions. So reused electric vehicle batteries. And bottom right hand side, we've got a slide just showing our smart controls. So this is from Endeavour House, a number of the bigger buildings. What we've been doing is trying to trim energy usage within the buildings. So that's a bit of what we've done so far. What I've come to kind of talk about is just advice on what schools can look at in terms of reducing their utility emissions. So whilst a lot of the talk on the previous slides was about the bigger buildings and things we've done, we do have a number of smaller buildings across the state, so we've applied similar techniques to look at. The most important thing is looking at your cost and usage. So you can't know what can be achieved, same with emissions as well, without looking back at performance historically. And then also importantly, look at what the school can do to influence things on site. Knowing where that line is, what is possible now, what might be possible in the future. One of the ways you can do this is looking at your energy data and comparing it to activity during the school. So just trying to look at where things might be going wrong or where things can be changed, just to get a more efficient picture. And last point is benchmarking. So once you've gathered all your data together, knowing exactly how the school is performing, whether it be with your carbon emissions, with any sort, looking at similar schools within the trust or across the authority estates, and looking what the kind of standard is and what the difference it can be if you were able to achieve that. What is the step change that would need to happen? Okay. So the reason I'm saying gather all the data together and time of usage is because it's knowing that value. One of the stark pieces of information, you probably hear this graph shows energy cost. This is actually on the corporate estate. I've taken the numbers off on the left hand side, but it was fairly flat before a massive spike that happened in the meantime. This was the energy crisis that happened in 2022. The black line, or the blue line, is where we would have been if we hadn't been doing anything. The orange line is then what we've achieved since. We're currently 24, 25. So we're about here on the graph. Reason I'm showing this graph is if a similar graph could be plotted against a school, is just showing what the impact of the change can be in financial terms. So I appreciate schools don't have much budget to spend, and there's more important things perhaps to spend it on. But then I'm also saying that if there's any things that can be done, it's showing the advantage of that change. So I think one of the key takeaways from this particular slide, and what I wanted to impress on all schools, is that sadly energy costs are rising. So when assessing kind of the impacts of any particular change or any investment needed within the building, it's looking at a picture over the next five years, next 10 years, next 15 years, rather than kind of the immediate budgets, if possible. Okay, so on to the next slide. So when I was talking about knowing your energy budgets, one of the key aspects of that is looking at your bills, particularly your electricity bills. They're not very exciting things, so I apologise in advance. But the way electricity providers charge their usage is changing all the time. So it's important to stay on top of time of usage, time of day usage, and kind of how things change. Ask questions wherever possible. I won't go into it in minute detail, but it's just being aware that there's certain things that can be done to kind of reduce costs if things haven't been checked on by your energy provider. So it's always worth checking in regularly with whoever is contracting your energy to say, my availability charge, for example, this is like a mobile phone data charge, is this set at the right level? Because if you're paying for 80 units of availability charge and you don't need all of them, that's £177 you're spending every month. Or if you're going over your usage, similar to mobile phone data, you could be getting penalty charges within that respect. There are no quick wins necessarily with this, but then it's also worth just keeping an eye on, because it's important to fix anything that's gone wrong and hasn't been looked after. So yeah, moving on. So when I was talking about energy data, if you have smart meters, you should have really, really granular energy data available, and this could be an activity that could be within a science or a maths classroom, depending on kind of the ability of the students involved as well. But so using Excel, you can have a look at spreadsheet data, looking at energy usage. So this is the top left here. So this is actually listed by individual date. This is midnight, so you can see there's some yellow light numbers here, which signifying there's usage out of hours. So it's looking and identifying where things have gone wrong. On the top right hand side is basically an averaged out version of this over a month, and you can see there's some out of hours trails where I'm circling my mouse here. So those immediately start off that conversation for immediate usage. What has gone wrong here? It might be to a building maintenance provider saying something's gone wrong out of hours. So it's just kind of keeping that extra set of eyes on it. For those that prefer the graphical format, I've got it down the bottom here. So orange is the normal energy usage throughout the day. On the blue line, you can see out of hours, they're using an increased amount of electricity, and that is significant cost. So on this particular occasion, there was a pump left on for a few days, and it costs an awful lot of money. So if things go unchecked, there's money and there's carbon emissions achieved as a result. Bottom right hand side, for those that enjoy statistics, our view is basically just a scatter graph showing variables. This one is based on gas usage versus outside temperature. So the colder it gets along to the right hand side, how much gas usage you've got, it plots the two against one another. And essentially it's showing that particular building, the orange dots are after, the blue dots were before. So afterwards, no matter how far to the right you get in terms of how cold it is, at least half of the gas is being used as previously. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about some of the checks you could do in terms of data and getting to know your energy bills and your usage. Some of these practical checks that can be done around the school, lots of these things are done regularly within schools, I appreciate. Some of this could be made into a learning exercise or a project within the school. So going around and assessing your heat emitters, so your radiators, versus how the space is used. Have you got lots of heat pouring into areas you're not particularly using, and other areas where there's not sufficient radiators? The cost of those changes might actually be minimal versus the comfort and the energy savings. Checking your radiator settings as well is another thing. Just like making sure they're appropriate. Radiator locks. So I know we've got a particular problem within the council sometimes where people go into a space where there's temperature controls. People can turn it up, going, "This room's a bit cold." They leave the room 20 minutes later and leave the setting on very, very high. So a good idea. So for quite a cheap price, you can buy something to lock on the radiator, TRV valves basically, to lock it at a standard temperature, so it reduces over usage, and keeps it at a stable temperature for everyone, so it's not too cold, not too hot. Because the other downside is some people can come in and turn it down as well. Okay, next one, areas of heat loss. I think everyone's seen that sort of thing. We do have a thermal camera available as well. If anyone did need to borrow that for a particular occasion, we can come out to site and have a look. Down the bottom hand side, I'm starting to waffle a bit, so apologies. We've got age of boiler, age of heating controls, and age of any operation. So look around the building, what is old, trying to assess the impact of potential upgrades to that. I would always say, so our quick wins have been heating controls. Every winter or before the winter starts, it's worth getting somebody to come in, just check your set points are at appropriate level, so what temperatures you're warming to, and checking that the times are all set right, because they can easily fall out of function. Final bottom right hand corner, which arguably should have been front and center. I truly believe that every school at the moment should be looking at, is their roof space possible to install solar? Electricity prices are only going one way over the next few years. It's certainly a worthwhile investment where costs can be returned. So if there's capital investment, which is a very big ask, I appreciate, costs can be returned within 5 years, and over 10 years. There are there is cost avoidance there, which can go towards all sorts of other measures I'm sure people would rather be spending money on in schools. So it's certainly a worthwhile investment. There are also, as you've heard already from Linda, there's plenty of schemes out there. So the county council has one, and there's various other ones to look into in terms of hosting that solar on your roof and getting the advantage of reduced energy bills. I see it all too often where people say the costs are a lot more are reduced from where they were a couple of years ago, but it's only been the kind of the calm, it's been the eye of the storm, so to speak. It's going to kind of carry on over the next few years, sadly. Okay, so final takeaway.
Sorry,
Yep.
Mark. Can I just go in on the solar thing? I just wanted to raise that there is a lot of deals out there,
Yep.
and there is a lot of fine print. So regardless, obviously we've introduced Solar Up, but regardless of what deal you choose, it is worth really looking at what kind of deal that you've got going forward. I just want to say that because there have been instances where schools have got in a pickle because they have the fine print has meant that they can pay regardless of whether the panels are producing solar energy, for example. Now the DFE are trying to stop that from happening, but I think it's worth noting that there are a lot of companies that it's worth really doing your research.
It is a very, very good point. So it is actually for me the bottom panel on the below slide.
Sorry,
I was oh, that's not a problem at all. It's definitely worth saying. So in terms of the final slide, be the energy champion. This is partly why I'm looking at kind of what's the value in energy savings. There is no magic answer. It takes lots of patience, lots of hard work, lots of wrong avenues, but it does take someone being very, very persistent, and I truly believe it's worthwhile. Second one is seek impartial advice, resource and support. Part of my role is to offer help to schools wherever I can, and just across the council if anyone needs any advice. Sadly, I'm considered what's a subject matter expert within these things. Someone called me that the other day. I'm going, oh blimey. And the last thing is beware the guaranteed cost saving. So there was the mention of solar previously. The DFE is currently, I don't know what the latest advice is, but quite rightly, there's been some concern about a number of schemes previously offering out rental roof spaces is a common phrase. And this is probably why the county council is looking to offer a scheme and to support, is to make sure that there's not kind of private companies coming in trying to offer things that aren't suitable for the end user. So it's always worth checking the detail. We also have seen over the years plenty of what's called an energy broker out there going, sign with us, we can get you a cheaper deal. Sadly, the reason energy prices is going up is not because of the kind of the wholesale elements of the bill. It's because of things that you can't control. The cheapest way to reduce your energy bills is by reducing your energy usage. There's not a great deal of procurement strategy that can be used to so I'm always very, when someone goes, oh, I can guarantee 20% saving, I'd say just buyer beware and kind of check the details. I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm just saying kind of check what they mean in terms of that phrases. Another common one we have seen is these magic products that you can add to your boiler or to your heating system that will guarantee all sorts of savings, and things have been sold into various places. And I think it's just always be diligent and ask lots of people about that advice, because it's showing evidence of where it's actually worked, and because sometimes they sell a product and there's a saving and you're kind of going, well, was that as a result of that product, or was that just kind of what you would call a natural saving? Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing now because I feel like I've waffled a little bit there. So, but last thing to mention, myself and my colleague, we do like to come out and visit schools, and we can offer desktop support. So looking at rooftop spaces, we can have a quick look through your energy data. So I can't promise an immediate response, but then we are quite happy to try and support for those that are really keen and interested to see what they can achieve at the school. So thank you, everyone.